welcome to a new video interview opportunity here at Shoganet Gaming News. Well, today we'll be addressing the UK market, and for that we have the privilege to be speaking with one of the leading operators there, which is Rank Group, the operator of Grosvenor Casinos and Mega Bingos. And we are joined today by David Williams, which is the Director of Public Affairs at Rank. So thank you, David, for joining us today and your time.
You're very welcome.
Great. Well, we can start by having your own assessment of the current situation of Grosvenor Casinos, which have reopened in May 17. So, which is the current situation there, also in the Mega Bingos. In terms of these restrictions, capacity restrictions, the protocols are any difference from pre-pandemic conditions?
Yeah, well, look, I think probably the first thing to say is we are delighted to be finally open. It's been a very, very long wait. We had a bit of a stop-start year in 2020, obviously back in March 2020. We went into full national lockdown. Our bingo clubs reopened slightly ahead of our casinos. In Scotland, there were further delays. There were sort of regional setbacks. And then just after Christmas, of course, the UK went into its third and hopefully, fingers crossed, final lockdown, which has kept us closed for the single longest period all the way through, as you say, through to May the 17th. Upon reopening, look, a lot of the safety protocols that we've got in place in our venues customers are familiar with them, and they're broadly in line with the rest of the hospitality industry. So I don't think customers who are going into casinos or bingo clubs are necessarily greeted with a brand new set of restrictions. If they're going into bars and pubs and restaurants, they generally know the drill, got to wear masks when moving around. I think casinos and bingo clubs have a well-deserved reputation for being very COVID secure venues. They are generally in the UK, particularly our bingo clubs, pretty big places, certainly compared to pubs and bars. Bingo is a game that is generally played whilst you're seated, so I don't think there's a huge amount of disruption. And I think customers generally accept the restrictions that have to be put in place, and it doesn't actually hinder their enjoyment. That's certainly not what we found in the first, 2.5 weeks of trading.
Very clear. So would you say that, which segments of players would you say that are returning for the most part? What is the feedback from them, and if we can still speak about the pent-up demand that was quite expected for when these restrictions started to relax. So are you seeing any of this?
Well, look, I think because we had quite a long runway leading up to May the 17th when we knew, or we had our fingers crossed, we hoped that we would be allowed to reopen, and then we were allowed to reopen. And certainly there was an expectation that there would be pent-up demand. UK consumers have been sitting at home. They, I guess, have sort of had built-up frustrations. I think, whereas perhaps in 2020, there was very much a premium in the messaging in our venues around these things being safe and secure. I think now across the piece, there is a feeling that people want to go and enjoy themselves and have an entertainment experience. Now, the level to which that pent-up demand would come back was always going to be very important to us. We've been delighted with performance. It's been pretty impressive. London has been different. I think the London market relies on two things. Obviously, tourism, which has fundamentally not come back because of the travel restrictions, understandably. So London is, compared to the rest of the UK, London is down, but we knew that it would be. And I think the other thing with London is, particularly at the high end, some of those sort of high-end players haven't been able to come back into the country, so that has an impact on revenues. But we knew that was coming. We sort of anticipated that, and actually London isn't performing too badly. Outside of London, performance is good. The big question, of course, is whether it is just a bubble, a spike, and of course, you know, off the back of that, there will be a sort of leveling off of trade. We don't know that yet. We obviously hope that we can sustain some of these early numbers. An awful lot of that is to do with well, two things: us getting the product proposition right, but also consumer confidence. It appears to be there. The feedback from customers, and you talk about which segments of customers there are. There are recreational customers. There are some high-end players who are in the country, and there are, of course, sort of people who are trying casinos and bingo clubs, but especially casinos for the first time. So a great cross-section of customers, but it is that recreational, leisure, entertainment-seeking customer who we're looking out for primarily. And their feedback is, look, delighted with the safety and COVID-secure measures that we have in place without them being onerous. Really impressed with some of the improvements that we've made to a lot of our venues in the last 12 months during lockdown. They feel safe both in a sort of COVID sense, but also in a safer gambling sense, which is really, really important at the moment. But also able to have a good time, able to enjoy themselves, and not particularly hindered by some of the restrictions, for example, on food and drink. So reasons to be cheerful. We're not crowing about it too loudly. There's a lot of work to do, and we feel as if we've actually got further to go in order to drive those numbers. The hope is that it's not just pent-up demand, but actually the numbers are sustainable.
All right. Well, so the government has this roadmap. The next phase of reopenings will be on June 21. I don't know if you expect this will make any difference in terms of gaming business and the casino business in the UK. But what are your plans, goals, and expectations for the coming weeks or months regarding this reopening process?
Well, look, I mean, here in the UK, even today, it is dominant in the news as to whether this sort of latest stage of easing, penciled in for June the 21st, will go ahead. Scotland yesterday slightly hit the pause button. They had their roadmap in Scotland, and that's been somewhat delayed. So there's a question mark as to whether that's going to happen in England. I think in real terms, on June the 21st, the experience for customers in our venues will be broadly the same. The key thing really, I think, is around consumer confidence. Customers, the public at large, have had their confidence? Yeah, their kind of expectations dented quite a lot in the last 12 months. Yes, there has been understanding as to the rationale behind that, but wherever there are sort of setbacks when it comes to spikes around new variants of the virus, that sort of impact on hospitality, leisure, and entertainment, it's not specific to casinos. It's certainly not specific to bingos. It's just a kind of nationwide apprehensiveness. And I think that's why it's very important, whilst respecting all of the scientific basis for making the decisions, we would be delighted were we to get the green light on June the 21st, because it's just another staging post that allows people to lift their chins a bit, feel more confident about going out, and we can get back to, I'm reluctant to use the word, get back to normal. Nothing is going to be normal, but sort of move forward into a place where we can actually put a proposition in front of more and more customers that we are very confident they're going to embrace.
Okay. Well, since you are focusing on this confidence from the audience, which is very essential for this recovery in the gaming industry. Well, we have covered at Chogonet the push from the BGC, the British Gaming Council, regarding against the mandated closures of casinos. And Rank was one of the operators that showed its opposition against these mandated closures, considering all the measures and the investment that the companies have made to make the gaming environment safer for gamblers, and that there was no clear evidence that this was a threat considering the COVID restrictions and prevention. So, how would you assess your current work with the regulator and the government to prevent further restrictions, that in case there is any maybe a rise in the cases after these reopenings?
Well, look, this goes back to the sort of sequence of events in 2020. And I think one of the frustrations that we had last year was that we felt quite unfairly, and not through any not based on any sort of scientific rationale, casinos somehow got detached from wider hospitality, from the pub business, bars and restaurants, which led to a delay in reopening in, I think it was June, July. And then it led to a sort of tiering system, and we just weren't in the pack. Now, what happened before the end of the year was that there was a correction to that. And in fairness, I think we have to give a lot of credit to the government for listening to the arguments that we were making, the evidence that we were providing. We worked very closely with the government. We had a visit from the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Jonathan Van Tam, to one of our London casinos. He was joined by representatives from Public Health England, I think from the Cabinet Office. And, you know, they were very impressed with what we had in place. And soon after that, we were allowed to reopen. So the frustrations, such as they were, and the objections that we made, were that we felt we were being singled out unfairly. The minute we got sort of put into the pack with the rest of hospitality, so when pubs and bars open, we open. If they have to close, we have to close. That is perfectly fair. And that is the situation in England and Wales that we're in now. Still got a bit of work to do in Scotland for what we believe should be sort of an equitable treatment with other leisure and entertainment businesses. We've not got there yet with Scotland. But I think broadly we're comfortable with that, and credit must be paid to government, who we worked very hard with. We have a good relationship with our sponsor department, DCMS. I think one of the few good things that has sort of come out of a very, very challenging time in the last 12 months is government really have got to grips with the nature of our business, what it is that we do, the people that we employ, what we do in the communities, and that stands us in good stead for a big piece of work, the government's review of gambling legislation, which is very much underway now.
Well, I was going to mention this review. Maybe, well, you already mentioned some of the topics, but maybe you can elaborate on the main issues to address or enhance in this situation, considering also this new landscape. What are your current demands, or maybe the key points to work further on, and to bring this to try to optimize the business environment for land-based casinos and bingos in the UK?
Well, yeah, look, we welcome the review. The government announced it in December and asked for a sort of call for evidence from interested parties. We made our submissions both as the casino operators within the Betting and Gaming Council, but also as Rank Group. We are the biggest casino operator, land-based casino operator in the UK. We're the second biggest land-based bingo operator in the UK. The requests such as we have, I think, are fairly modest. And I think broadly, the mood music is that the review of gambling legislation will probably lead to a net tightening of regulations for the industry. There'll be some sort of necessary changes. As long as they are evidence-based, I think the industry should look to sort of meet them head on. And a great deal of work is being done by colleagues of mine across the industry in ensuring that we are ready for that. Specifically for casinos, I mean, fundamentally, the last Gambling Act was in 2005, and it created an experiment for land-based casinos in the UK, the 2005 Act casinos. In short, what has happened since then is that experiment has not been seen through. Progress for land-based casino industries by way of legislation and regulation has stalled, and fundamentally, we've been left behind. We're sort of hindered by some really strange, archaic restrictions. We can't offer sports betting in our casinos. That's almost unheard of anywhere else in the world. We have some pretty draconian limits on the number of slot machines that we can have. We've got 51 venues All but one of them is capped at having 20 slots per license. We've got a couple of licenses in a few casinos. But fundamentally, the consumer, the customer who goes into a casino at the moment is having their enjoyment hindered by legislation, sometimes which is over half a century old. So what we're looking for is a pretty modest modernization program. We're in the process of garnering political support, which is going well. I think politicians broadly are keen to listen to the arguments to find out what can be done to allow casinos to compete and to sort of catch up with the rest of the leisure and entertainment and gambling industry. In bingo, again, it's sort of pretty modest changes. We're looking to give customers more opportunities to win and have a good time, sort of just to bring it sort of kicking and screaming into 2021 and beyond. And just to appeal to a younger demographic, certainly in land-based bingo. We don't think that these requests are especially controversial. We have pretty broad support across the political spectrum, and we're looking to sort of mobilize that, because if we can get that right, the future for casinos in the UK is pretty bright. We employ an awful lot of people in jobs. We generate pretty significant tax receipts. These are very, very highly regulated venues where destination venues where people specifically go to have a good time. If we are unable to secure those changes, because this is a once in a generation opportunity, it doesn't bode well. And unfortunately, the kind of the inertia that some of us have felt for a while in the casino industry will be continued. So big opportunity to correct that. As I say, the requests are not particularly immodest. So fingers crossed we will get there, and looking forward to working with government and all the interested stakeholders along the way.
Sure, very clear. Well, one last topic that I would like to address today was as many companies, land-based companies, operators have seen their revenues affected by the pandemic. Somehow the online divisions were they invested in enhancing or expanding their online business to try to offset these declines in the land-based or retail shops and venues. So I would like to ask you how, in the case of Rank, how these reopenings are affecting, or what effect are they having on your online business, and what are your outlooks and plans for this area?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, at the Rank Group, UK land-based revenues, so that the revenues that we generate from our Grosvenor casinos and our Mecca Bingo clubs still accounts for well over 70% of all our group revenue. So that kind of puts into context the size of both our international business and also our digital business. It's interesting, you know, I've read in so many places about how the digital businesses during lockdown have soared and sort of gone through the roof. Of course, there's an element of logic in that, with customers unable to go to venues, switching channel. We didn't see that. We took a very strong line on customer affordability during lockdown, and of course that has an impact on revenues. What I would say is the sort of dynamic between venues and online, with venues reopening, gives a real sort of fillip, a real impetus to our omni-channel aspirations. We know full well that customers who play with us in venues and then go to shift online are more loyal. They are fundamentally a sort of higher value in the fullest sense of the word customer. So it's good to have that kind of throughput, for want of a better word, of customers to sort of power the online, the digital space. I mean, as far as aspirations go, we acquired Stride Gaming in back end of sort of 2019. So good progress is being made on transitioning our legacy Rank brands, Grosvenor and Mecca, onto the proprietary platform. That opens up a whole new range of opportunities to do some exciting stuff. So look, we've got ambitious plans to grow the digital business. And the reopening of venues isn't counter to that. It will just create that omni-channel opportunity to make that PER just that little bit more compellingly.
Great. Well, David, it's been a very interesting conversation, and we, of course, will be looking very closely to this reopening in the UK of casinos. So we look forward to catching up again soon with you, Joe Gaming News. So thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Have a nice day. Bye.